There comes a moment when someone who's been holding back, withdrawing, or keeping their guard high suddenly realizes they might have broken what they actually value most. It's that gut punch of clarity when silence feels heavier than words and detachment feels less like strength and more like regret. And in that moment, they start to question, did I just ruin everything? But the truth is rarely what they imagine it to be. The moment an avoidant realizes they may have screwed things up is not as casual as it might appear from the outside. It's not a fleeting thought. It's not just a shrug and moving on to the next distraction. It's a deep and jarring recognition that lands in their chest, like a weight they cannot easily push away. At first, it comes quietly, almost like an itch at the back of their mind. Something feels off, something doesn't sit right, but they try to brush it aside. They tell themselves, "It's fine, I needed space, I was just protecting myself." Yet beneath the surface, an uneasiness grows. The avoidance that once felt like control now feels like distance they can't undo, and that realization doesn't come with relief. It comes with panic. Inside, there's a sudden rush of thoughts they can't seem to silence. They replay the last conversation, the last message, the last time they chose silence instead of honesty. What once felt like safety now feels like a mistake, a miscalculation that might have cost them the very connection they secretly value most. And the panic isn't loud in the way others experience it. It's not crying, shouting, or openly regretting. It's a storm that rages inwardly behind calm eyes and controlled expressions. They keep the world from seeing the spiral, but within it feels like everything is collapsing. This panic often carries a strange duality. On one hand, there is guilt. Guilt for walking away when closeness was needed, guilt for staying quiet when words could have healed. On the other hand, there is fear. Fear that the damage is permanent, that no amount of reaching back can fix what has already been done. It's a paralyzing place to be. They know they want to undo the distance, but the very instinct that pushed them away in the first place still tells them to hold back. What makes this internal panic so powerful is that it is rarely shared. The people around them don't always see it. They may look indifferent, they may act unbothered, but the truth is that they're caught in a war between pride and regret. The fear of being exposed as vulnerable is stronger than the fear of losing what matters. So, instead of admitting the mistake, they replay it in their mind over and over, punishing themselves with the thought that maybe they've ruined everything. And yet, in that panic lies a hidden truth. They wouldn't feel it so deeply if the connection didn't matter. If they truly didn't care, there would be no storm, no restless thoughts, no late night rewinds of where things went wrong. The very fact that panic arises reveals a depth of feeling they struggle to admit even to themselves. It shows that underneath the armor of detachment, there is a heart that craves closeness more than it wants to admit. This moment of realization, this sudden awareness of a mistake, is not weakness. It's a crack in the walls they've built. It's the first glimpse of truth seeping through. And though it feels terrifying, it's also the very proof that connection isn't lost. Because the panic of thinking they've screwed it up only exists when something truly matters, and that is the truth they cannot escape. There is a tug of war that happens deep inside when they realize something has gone wrong. On one side, pride rises like a shield, whispering that they should stand their ground, that reaching out would look weak, that admitting fault would hand over too much power. On the other side, vulnerability quietly insists that the bond is more important than the facade. That may be the only way to salvage what they fear losing is to step down from the wall they've built. This battle is not simple because both voices carry truth and danger. Pride has always been their armor, the thing that keeps them from being hurt, and vulnerability has always felt like exposure, like stepping into a spotlight without any protection. To them, choosing vulnerability feels like gambling everything they've worked so hard to keep hidden. When pride takes the lead, they convince themselves they're unbothered. They stay silent, put on a mask of indifference, and pretend that the distance doesn't sting. They say nothing because saying something would be too much like surrendering. They convince themselves that if the other person really cared, they'd reach out first, they'd fix what was broken, they'd prove their worth. It's a strategy that feels safe in the moment, but eats away at them in the quiet hours when the mask slips and they are left with the truth that the silence is costing them far more than honesty ever would. But vulnerability doesn't go away. It lingers, pressing against their chest, reminding them of what they truly want. It shows up in flashes of longing, imagining what it would feel like to apologize, to explain, to simply say, "I messed up and I don't want this to end." Vulnerability tempts them with the possibility of healing, of closeness, of being seen for who they are without the armor. Yet, the very thought of letting someone in makes their body tense, as though every cell is screaming that it's unsafe. This is where the conflict burns brightest, the heart leaning one way, the defenses pulling the other. What makes this battle so exhausting is that neither side fully wins. Pride stops them from reaching out, but vulnerability won't let them forget. They go about their days appearing steady on the outside, but inside there's a constant back and forth dialogue they can't silence. Should I say something? No, it's too risky. But what if I lose them forever? Then maybe they were never mine. But what if they were? Around and around it goes, a cycle that drains them without ever moving forward. The irony is that the very thing they fear, vulnerability, is also the only path to resolution. Pride can maintain the walls, but it cannot repair the damage. Vulnerability feels terrifying, yet it's the only way to bring light into the darkness they've created. The battle between pride and vulnerability is not proof that they don't care. It's proof of just how much they do. If they truly felt nothing, there would be no war within, no restless pacing between strength and surrender. The struggle itself is evidence of the depth of their feelings. And in that conflict lies the truth pride may feel safe, but vulnerability is the only way they'll ever find peace. When the realization of a mistake settles in, the next phase is rarely a direct confrontation. Instead, it often turns into a dance between overthinking and silence. The avoidant mind doesn't rush into repair. It stalls, loops, and complicates. Every word they could say gets dissected, replayed, and judged before it ever leaves their lips. They think of reaching out, but then another thought cuts in. What if it makes things worse? What if I say too much? What if I sound needy? And so the message gets typed and deleted, the phone is picked up and put down, and the cycle repeats endlessly. From the outside, it may look like indifference, but on the inside, it is an exhausting over-analysis that leads to paralysis. Silence becomes their fallback, not because they don't care, but because they care too much to risk making the wrong move. They believe quiet keeps them safe, that staying silent is better than exposing themselves to rejection or misunderstanding. Yet, the silence that once gave them comfort quickly turns into a prison. Days pass, and the distance grows, and with it, so does the fear that they are letting something precious slip through their fingers. Still, they don't break the silence because the overthinking convinces them that if they wait just a little longer, the right moment will come, or maybe the other person will bridge the gap first. The irony is heavy. The more they think, the less they act. The less they act, the worse they feel. And the worse they feel, the more thoughts pile up about how hopeless the situation has become. It's not laziness or lack of interest that holds them back. It's the constant war between the desire to fix and the fear of making things irreparable. So they stay quiet, and the silence grows louder than words ever could. At night, the overthinking is relentless. Every detail of the past plays back with a cruel sharpness. The tone of a voice, the look in someone's eyes, the moment where they should have spoken but didn't. It all becomes evidence in their internal trial. They cross-examine themselves in ways harsher than anyone else ever could, silently punishing themselves for choices they made in the name of safety. It feels safer not to speak, but it also feels unbearable not to act. And so, They remain suspended in that uncomfortable middle ground, torn between fear and longing. What makes this stage so painful is that the other person often misreads the silence. They may interpret it as disinterest or coldness, while the truth is far more complicated. The silence is not apathy, it's overthinking in disguise. It's the weight of wanting to say everything, but being too terrified of saying the wrong thing. It's a quiet plea for time, space, and safety, even as the clock keeps ticking and chances slip away. In the end, overthinking and silence don't erase the desire to repair. They only delay it, bury it, and make it harder to reach. But beneath the stillness lies a heart that is restless, a mind that won't let go, and a longing that refuses to die down. And though silence feels like control, it is nothing more than fear stretched thin, waiting for the moment when courage will finally take its place. Beneath the layers of withdrawal, behind the walls carefully built to look unshakable, lies a quiet but undeniable truth they want repair. It may not look like it may not sound like it, but deep down the desire for closeness never disappears. Even when they convince themselves that distance is safer, their heart betrays them with small reminders. A song brings back a memory. A place feels emptier without the person they pushed away. Their mind drifts toward what it would feel like to bridge the gap, to hear a familiar laugh again, to know the bond is still intact. They crave the comfort of connection, but admitting that out loud feels like stepping off a cliff without knowing if there's ground beneath. The hidden desire for repair is a paradox. On the surface, they might appear cold or unaffected. They may even act as if nothing matters. But the truth is, detachment doesn't erase longing, it only buries it. The more they try to suppress it, the stronger it grows in silence. They want to reach out, to send a simple message, to find a way back. Yet every time the impulse rises, fear drags it back down. What if the other person doesn't care anymore? What if the damage is beyond fixing? What if admitting they want repair makes them look weak? These questions choke the desire before it ever becomes action. Still, the desire never fully dies. It shows itself in subtle ways, in the way they check in quietly, maybe through social media, maybe through indirect questions, maybe through thoughts they can't shake, no matter how much they try. It lingers in their heart, reminding them of the closeness they once had and the possibility that it could exist again. It's not pride that keeps them from acting. It's terror that their attempt at repair will be rejected. And yet the longer they hold back, the stronger the ache becomes. In moments of stillness, they imagine the conversations they wish they could have. They rehearse apologies, explanations, reassurances. They picture what it would feel like to drop the armor for just a moment and say, "I didn't mean to lose this. I don't want it to end." They fantasize about the relief of being met with understanding, about how much lighter it would feel to stop pretending indifference. And though they may never say it aloud, these inner rehearsals prove how badly they long for reconciliation. The hidden desire for repair reveals the truth about avoidance. It's not about not caring, it's about caring so much that the fear of being hurt again feels unbearable. The walls they build are not monuments to indifference, but fragile defenses against rejection. And even as those defenses stand tall, there's always a quiet voice inside reminding them that what they truly want isn't distance at all. It's closeness, it's healing, it's the safety of knowing the connection can survive mistakes. So while the outside world may only see silence, the reality is different. Beneath the calm exterior, there is a restless hope. A hope that it isn't too late, a hope that someone will see through the armor, a hope that despite the missteps, love still has space to grow again. The hidden desire for repair is not weakness. It is the clearest sign of how much they truly value what they thought they had lost. Fear is the quiet engine driving so much of their behavior, and nowhere is it clearer than when they believe they've messed things up. The fear of rejection is not just an ordinary worry for them. It's a force that shapes every choice, every hesitation, every silence. When they feel the bond slipping, they don't simply worry about losing someone. They fear the deeper wound of being seen, judged, and ultimately discarded. That possibility feels unbearable, so rather than step into the risk, they retreat into the shadows of distance. To those watching, it may look like apathy, but the reality is that fear has taken the wheel. This fear is not always rational, though it feels real in every cell of their body. It tells them stories. If they reach out, they'll be ignored. If they open up, they'll be mocked. If they show vulnerability, they'll be abandoned. The mind crafts these narratives so vividly that it becomes easier to believe them than to challenge them. And once that fear has a grip, it's incredibly difficult to break free. So they stay silent, they wait, they hope things might fix themselves without requiring them to step into the risk of rejection. But what makes this fear even more powerful is its ability to outweigh their own longing. They want repair, they want connection, but the possibility of being turned away feels like a deeper cut than living with silence. Rejection to them doesn't just mean no. It feels like proof of everything they secretly fear about themselves, that they're not enough, that closeness was never real, that love is always temporary. In their mind, silence may be painful, but rejection is shattering. So they choose silence, even as it eats at them from within. The tragedy is that this fear distorts reality. They imagine rejection in scenarios where acceptance might actually be waiting. They convince themselves the door is locked when in truth it may still be open. Fear magnifies every mistake until it looks unforgivable, when often the other person is still willing to listen, still open to understanding. But the avoidant heart struggles to trust this possibility, because to believe it would mean daring to hope, and hope feels dangerous when disappointment has always loomed so large in their past. This fear doesn't just affect their words. It shapes their body, their presence, their energy. They might look calm on the outside, but inside their chest tightens whenever they think about making a move. Their stomach knots at the idea of reaching out. Even imagining a conversation can make their pulse race. That's how deeply this fear runs, not just in thought, but in the very fabric of their being. It doesn't let them rest, yet it won't let them act either. And yet the truth that lingers beneath this fear is that rejection is rarely as catastrophic as they imagine. The stories their mind tells are not always reality. What they believe will break them is often just a moment of discomfort, a chance to learn a step toward genuine connection. But as long as fear holds the steering wheel, they remain trapped, unable to see that what they're running from is not rejection itself, but the shadows of their own insecurities. And until they face that fear will always feel heavier than love. Connection is far more resilient than they believe in the moments when guilt and fear take over, when they think they've ruined everything beyond repair. What they're really doing is magnifying their mistakes until they look bigger than the bond itself. But the truth is different. Relationships are not fragile glass that shatters at the first crack. They are living, breathing connections that bend, stretch, and carry the weight of imperfection. The reality is that one wrong step, one silence, one withdrawal doesn't always erase love or trust. More often than not, it is honesty and awareness that determine the future, not the mistake itself. This truth is difficult for them to accept because they see their missteps as proof that they are unworthy of closeness. Their mind turns a single flaw into a final judgment. They imagine that the distance they created cannot be undone. That silence has already spoken louder than words ever could. But the reality is, mistakes do not define the entire connection. What matters more is what comes after. The willingness to own the misstep, the courage to face it, and the choice to try again. The bond doesn't collapse under the weight of mistakes. It collapses under the weight of denial and pretense. What they rarely realize is that the other person is often far more understanding than they expect. Most people don't demand perfection. They don't want flawless walls and polished performances. They want authenticity. They want to know that even when fear takes over, even when avoidance creeps in, the heart behind it still values the connection. What repairs the cracks is not pretending they never existed, but shining light on them and saying, yes, I struggled, but I still care. That simple truth has the power to transform distance into closeness. The reality of connection is that it thrives on honesty, not perfection. It grows stronger when people can admit mistakes and still show up. In fact, vulnerability often deepens bonds in ways perfection never could. When they dare to step beyond silence, they often find that the very moment they feared would destroy everything is the moment that brings them closer than before. Because connection isn't built on never failing. It's built on how two people respond when failure inevitably happens. So when an avoidant thinks they've screwed it all up, the truth is usually softer than they imagine. They may have caused hurt, they may have created distance, but none of it has to mean the end. The real danger lies not in the mistake itself, but in the refusal to acknowledge it. If they can push past pride and fear, if they can lean into the honesty they've been avoiding, they may discover that what they thought was broken is still alive, still waiting, still willing to grow. The truth of connection is simple, but powerful love does not demand flawless execution. It asks for courage, humility, and presence. And when those are offered, even the deepest mistakes can become the soil where trust grows stronger than before. At the end of it all, what looks like indifference is often nothing more than fear in disguise. The moments when they think they've ruined everything are not really the end. They are an invitation to see the truth that lies beneath their walls. Pride may keep them silent, overthinking may trap them, fear may weigh them down, but none of that erases their desire for closeness or the possibility of repair. Connection is stronger than their doubts, and mistakes are not the final word. What truly matters is whether they can step past the fear of rejection and embrace the honesty that love requires. Because in the end, the truth is simple. They haven't destroyed everything. They've only been given the chance to choose differently, to show up, and to discover that the bond they thought was lost may be waiting to grow deeper than ever before.